Police are now investigating this case as the investigation shows that his wife is in the center of this investigation. Now, today she addressed those claims of her abusing her husband before his death. Wife Brenda Edwards addressed those claims when asked, did she abuse her husband?
Never.
The dark secret behind Dennis Edwards' death finally revealed. The world mourned when Dennis Edwards died. Before his death, whispers of something far more disturbing than illness began to emerge.
The music world mourning the loss of a Motown legend this weekend. Former Temptations lead singer Dennis Edwards died yesterday in Chicago.
Though the official cause was said to be complications from meningitis, troubling accusations pointed to his wife, Brenda Edwards, as possibly playing a darker role.
His wife, Brenda Edwards, told several media outlets he died from meningitis complications, but the Cook County Medical Examiner's Office says Edwards' cause of death is under investigation.
As questions lingered, new revelations painted a grim picture, one that included claims of abuse, neglect, and even an attempt to silence him forever. Dennis was restrained and denied medical care.
News reports claimed last month an agency that investigates elder abuse claims filed an emergency protection order stating the 74-year-old Edwards suffered from neglect.
Now, with legal documents and official investigations underway, the tragic story of Dennis Edwards is being re-examined, uncovering a truth many may have tried to keep buried. Let's delve deeper. Dennis Edwards, the former lead singer of the Temptations, passed away in Chicago. He was 74 years old. He had been sick for a long time and could not beat the illness. His wife, Brenda Edwards, said he died from health problems. It was a very sad time for his family, friends, and fans.
We're learning dark new details tonight about the days leading up to the death of Temptations singer Dennis Edwards.
People from all over the world shared their sadness. Many gave tributes to Dennis. Otis Williams, the last living original member of the Temptations, wrote on Twitter about how heartbroken he was. He said, "Very sad to learn of the passing of our brother, Dennis Edwards. He is now at peace, and our love and prayers go out to his family." He also said that Dennis helped build the strong name and legacy of the Temptations. The group's music will always live on. Otis ended his message with the words, "Temptations forever." Berry Gordy, the man who started Motown Records, also gave a statement. He said Dennis joined the Temptations at a very important time. He praised Dennis for having the right look and a very special voice. He said Dennis was tall, dark, and handsome, and had a voice that stood out from all others. Berry believed Dennis was the perfect fit for the group. But not long after his death, sad and confusing news came out. Reports said that Dennis's wife, Brenda, had a restraining order placed against her.
Police are now investigating this case as the investigation shows that his wife is in the center of this investigation. Now, today she addressed those claims of her abusing her husband before his death.
This happened because of claims that she hurt Dennis in the last days of his life. Some said she abused him while he was very sick. Dennis and Brenda had moved to Chicago to get better care for his health. Now, with these serious claims, an investigation had to start to find the truth.
His wife, Brenda Edwards, told several media outlets he died from meningitis complications, but the Cook County Medical Examiner's Office says Edwards' cause of death is under investigation.
Brenda Edwards quickly spoke out against the reports. She said none of the claims were true. She said she loved Dennis and took care of him during their marriage. She believed that the people saying bad things about her were trying to take money or hurt her name.
News reports claimed last month an agency that investigates elder abuse claims filed an emergency protection order stating the 74-year-old Edwards suffered from neglect.
Still, if the claims had been true, it would have been a very painful end to the life of such a great singer. Dennis had a powerful gospel-style voice that many singers wished they had. He had one of the most amazing voices in soul music. Chicago police began to look into the abuse claim. They found that a report had been made weeks before Dennis died. It said he may have been a victim of domestic violence back in December. Police were not sure if the abuse had anything to do with his death, but they had to take the report seriously. The investigation began to find out what really happened to Dennis.
An autopsy was performed and the results are pending at this time. The cause and manner of death is pending. All deaths that fall under the jurisdiction of the medical examiner are investigated.
CBS 2 News got copies of the legal papers. These papers said that Brenda tried to hurt Dennis by pressing his head down into the bed to stop him from breathing. Brenda told the news that it was not true at all. She said there was never any abuse in their home. She also said she was the one planning the funeral for Dennis and wanted to do it in St. Louis. Brenda said the accusations were lies made by people who wanted money. She promised to clear her name. At the time, police and doctors were waiting for a full autopsy report. That report would tell them more about how Dennis really died. Some people said it was from meningitis, a serious illness. Others were not sure. Brenda said he died from that illness, but Dennis's daughter, Isa Pointer Stewart, had questions. Isa, who is also a singer, said her father's doctors never told her about meningitis. She thought something didn't feel right about the whole story. That made things even more confusing and emotional. The courts had also received a report from Adult Protective Services. This report claimed that Brenda abused Dennis just weeks before he died.
The 74-year-old Edwards suffered from neglect and abuse in his final weeks at the hands of his wife.
It made the public very upset. Dennis had been loved by so many people for years, and now there were these dark stories being told about his final days. People started talking more about elder abuse and how it can sometimes happen in families without anyone noticing. Even though the claims were serious, later in 2018, the investigation ended. Officials said there was not enough proof to say that Brenda had abused Dennis. The case was closed. Brenda was cleared of all charges. There was no evidence to show that she had done anything wrong. After that, the emergency protection order against her was removed. That order had only been in place for a short time, just before Dennis died.
Wife Brenda Edwards addressed those claims when asked, did she abuse her husband?
Never.
The public and media followed the story closely. News reports came out quickly, and people shared their thoughts on social media. Some were angry, some were confused, others were just sad. Many found it hard to believe that someone as great as Dennis Edwards could have such a troubled ending. His name was known all over the world for his music, and now he was part of a story about possible abuse and mystery. Still, Dennis Edwards will always be remembered for his talent and his time with the Temptations. He sang on big hits like Papa Was a Rollin' Stone and Cloud 9. His voice was strong and filled with soul. He gave life to every song he sang. Even though his final days were filled with questions, his music lives on. In the end, Brenda kept saying she was innocent. She said she had been a good wife for 18 years. She said she stood by Dennis through sickness and hard times. Even though many people doubted her, the law cleared her name. No proof was found against her. Back in the day, Motown music was changing. The love songs of Smokey Robinson were starting to fade. And a new sound called psychedelic soul was becoming popular. That new sound was being pushed by Norman Whitfield and was influenced by people like Sly Stone. The Temptations needed someone new to help them with this new style. Dennis Edwards was just the right fit. It felt like it was meant to be. Many fans were worried when David Ruffin left the Temptations. People thought no one could ever take his place.
But I wish it would rain.
But then Dennis came in and surprised everyone. He was young, full of energy, and had the perfect voice for the group's new direction. He didn't copy Ruffin. He brought his own style and helped the Temptations grow. Dennis Edwards Jr. was born on February 3, 1943, in Fairfield, Alabama. It was a small town, not far from Birmingham. His parents were Reverend Dennis Edwards Sr. and Essa Fuller. His love for music started early. At just 2 years old, he began singing in his father's church. Music was everywhere in his home. The church piano was kept at their house. Dennis would play it often, and that made him want to learn more about music.
My dad, he was a minister, and my mom played piano also.
When Dennis was around 7 to 10 years old, his family moved to Detroit, Michigan. In Detroit, he continued singing at church. He later became a choir leader. As a teenager, he went to the Detroit Conservatory of Music. There, he studied how to play instruments like the saxophone and learned about music theory.
I had formal education I went to the Detroit Music Conservatory and I took strings, I took harmony, I took saxophone.
He also attended high school, first at Cass Technical High School and later graduating from Eastern High School. Back then, it was common for young boys to sing in gospel groups. Dennis joined a group called the Crowns of Joy, which sang every Sunday at church. He later joined another gospel group called the Golden Wonders. This group was a big step up for him. They were well known in gospel circles. Even though he never got to record with either group, people started to notice his talent.
I was playing the singer could sing. And they knew I could sing a little bit in church, and they asked me could I come up and sing a couple songs. The only song I knew was Sam Cooke's "Darling You Send Me."
But before he could take music further, Dennis had to serve in the military. In January 1961, he joined the U.S. Army. He served until December 1965 as a field artilleryman. Most of his time was spent in Europe, especially in Germany. While stationed in Germany, something happened that changed his life forever. He was guarding a site that held the remains of a Holocaust crematorium. The history was heavy, and it made him think deeply. To help the soldiers deal with the stress, their families would send them music from home. One of his roommates was a man named Jeffrey, whose father worked for Berry Gordy at Motown. Jeffrey would get the latest Motown records sent to him. Dennis and his friends listened to all of them. Songs by Marvin Gaye, Mary Wells, The Four Tops, Smokey Robinson, and The Temptations. One song stood out to Dennis, My Girl by The Temptations.
My Girl, I heard My Girl when I was in Dachau, Germany, in service. And I didn't know who it was. I thought it was Sam Cooke. And that was David Ruffin, and I kind of fell in love with his voice.
David Ruffin's voice moved him. Dennis listened to that song over and over. He loved it so much that he started singing it all the time. There was a piano in the mess hall, and Dennis would go there and sing. Soon, he formed a small band with other soldiers. They played in nightclubs near the base to pass the time and enjoy themselves. One club, called Birdland, became their regular spot. Dennis even asked the owner if they could perform there. The owner said yes, and the audience loved them. Surprisingly, Dennis made more money from singing at night than he did as a soldier during the day. This made him believe that maybe he could do music full-time. Around this time, he also found out that his hero, Sam Cooke, had moved from gospel to soul music.
Love you, I 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 love you.
That helped Dennis make up his mind. He knew what he wanted to do when he returned home. But there was one problem: his parents. They were strict and very religious. They didn't support the idea of singing secular music. Dennis knew they wouldn't be happy, but he was determined. One of those stars was James Jamerson, a well-known bass player. James was very impressed by how Dennis sang. He believed Dennis could become a big star one day. James told him that he shouldn't just sing at the club. He should try recording his own music. James even helped him get an audition at Motown, one of the biggest music labels at the time. At the audition, people liked him, but they told him they didn't have space for another artist on their list. Still, They didn't want to lose him, so they offered to pay him $500 a week just to keep him around. Dennis agreed happily. He didn't even have to do much, just work on his vocals and pick up his check every week. Over time, Dennis started to feel a little unhappy. He was getting paid, yes, but he wasn't doing any real music work. He began to feel like he could sing better than many of the other artists at Motown. He wanted more. Around that same time, three famous songwriters, Holland, Dozier, and Holland, left Motown because they were unhappy with the money they were getting. They started their own label and wanted Dennis to join them. They even said they would buy out his contract with Motown just so he could come work with them. Dennis got excited and ran back to Motown to ask what it would take to leave. But before he could make any moves, something surprising happened. A member of a Motown group called The Contours got sick and had to go to the hospital. The group needed a replacement fast. They had a big show coming up in just 7 days at the famous Howard Theater. Motown asked Dennis to step in and sing with The Contours. To make it even better, the group would be opening for The Temptations, one of the most famous groups of the time. Dennis accepted the offer. He performed so well that night that members of The Temptations, David Ruffin and Eddie Kendricks, noticed him. He remembered standing at the side of the stage, seeing them look at him. He didn't know if it was a good or bad thing, but soon after, they became friends. Dennis was doing well with The Contours and even got to sing lead on a song called It's So Hard Being a Loser. The song came out in March 1967 and did well on the R&B chart, reaching number 35. It also made it to number 83 on the pop chart. The group kept performing older hits too, like Do You Love Me, and that made them even more popular. But not everything was perfect. There was a big problem in the group: drugs. Some members were using hard drugs, and it started to affect the group badly. Dennis found out the hard way. One night, after a great performance, the group decided to celebrate by using drugs. Dennis didn't take part, but when the police came the next morning, they arrested everyone, including him. He was taken to court but later released on bond. Even though he was innocent, he felt deeply hurt and frustrated. He didn't want to be around that lifestyle, so he asked to go back on retainer. He left The Contours and returned to performing at the club, just like the old days. While Dennis was back at the club, The Temptations were having problems of their own. David Ruffin, one of their lead singers, wanted the group to be renamed David Ruffin and The Temptations. The other members didn't like that. They believed all of them were equal and no one was above the rest. The fights got worse, and in the end, they fired Ruffin. Now they needed someone new, and they thought of Dennis.
David Ruffin, and I kind of fell in love with his voice, and I thought it was just a great song. I had no idea I would be singing when it takes place, but
When Dennis heard the news, he felt both shocked and honored. He looked up to The Temptations. They were like a machine that worked perfectly. He couldn't believe he was now going to be a part of it, but at the same time, he was nervous. Fans loved Ruffin, and many believed he could never be replaced. When Motown announced Dennis as the new member, fans were curious. Would he live up to Ruffin's talent?
by that time, the first few 6-7 months I was in the group, every night I'm rehearsing.
Okay, right.
Because it's something new. We want to put this in the show. I'm like, oh my God, I got to do that. And so I'm learning steps.
Dennis was honest. He said he couldn't replace Ruffin, but he promised to give it his all. He officially joined The Temptations on July 9th, 1968, during a show in Valley Forge, Pennsylvania. But just when things were looking good, Ruffin came back. Without being invited, he crashed the stage, took the microphone from Dennis, and started singing. The crowd cheered. Ruffin pulled this stunt several times over the next month. Eventually, Motown got tired of it. They told Dennis to step down and promised him a solo career. They planned to bring Ruffin back, but Ruffin didn't show up for his next performance in Gaithersburg, Maryland. That was the final straw. Motown gave up on Ruffin and brought Dennis back for good. He was now officially part of the Temptations. Even though he had trouble at first, missing a few words and dance steps, he kept pushing forward. The group's music style was also changing. Before, they sang soft love songs written by Smokey Robinson, but now they were trying something new. More hits followed. They released I Can't Get Next to You in 1969, which was another big success. Then came Ball of Confusion in 1970. Superstar, Remember How You Got Where You Are. In 1971, and Papa Was a Rolling Stone in 1972. Some people thought Papa Was a Rolling Stone was about Dennis's father, but that wasn't true. The song said, he died on the 3rd of September, but in real life, his father passed away on October 3rd. So that was just a coincidence. Even with all their success, not everyone liked the new style. Some of the group members didn't enjoy the psychedelic sound. They wanted to go back to simple songs, but they also knew the new music was popular and was bringing in awards and money. So they stuck with it. Dennis had come a long way. From singing in a club, getting arrested unfairly, and being unsure of his future, to becoming the lead singer of one of the most famous groups in music history. He worked hard and stayed true to himself even when things got tough. His story is one of talent, patience, and never giving up. Sometimes people forget where they came from. They get famous and try something new, but it doesn't feel the same. That's what happened with the Temptations. They wanted to try different music styles, but fans missed the old sound that made them popular in the first place. So they went back to what worked. But even though this helped their career, not everyone was happy. Dennis seemed upset. He didn't like some of the changes happening behind the scenes. Still, even with some problems in the group, their single became a hit. It reached number 5 on the R&B charts and even won 4 Grammy Awards in 1972. It was a big success, but things were not peaceful inside the group. The trouble started when their producer, Norman Whitfield, focused more on the music than the singing. The group members, especially Dennis, felt that the voices were just as important as the music. This caused a lot of arguments. The Temptations wanted their vocals to be the main thing, but Whitfield kept pushing his ideas. Eventually, they decided to get a new producer, Jeffrey Bowen. They hoped things would get better with someone new. Bowen worked on 3 of their albums, In a Mellow Mood in 1967, I've been in love like you. A Song for You in 1975, and Wings of Love in 1976. But Bowen brought in new problems too. When Bowen produced Wings of Love, he chose to highlight Dennis Edwards' voice more than the rest of the group. Some said he didn't even record the background vocals properly, or he made them so quiet that fans could barely hear them. It seemed like Bowen was only interested in making Edwards the star. According to Otis Williams, a founding member of the Temptations, Bowen even pulled Edwards aside and told him he didn't need the rest of the group. He promised to make him even more famous on his own. This made Edwards feel special, but it also hurt the group's unity. Fame started changing him. During this time, Dennis Edwards became a big name. Even Aretha Franklin noticed him. Alleged relationship with Dennis Edwards. Aretha was engaged to Dennis Edwards. At the time, both of their careers were at their peak, and nobody knew they were even a couple. Somehow, they kept it quiet back then, which is hard to believe today. But later on, both Aretha and Dennis spoke about their past love for each other, even after their relationship ended. Although he became famous as a member of the Temptations, and later had his own successful solo career, he was best known for his hit song, Don't Look Any Further, which came out in the 1980s, featuring Seda Garrett. Edwards was also the father of a daughter with another very famous soul singer. But despite his success, Dennis admitted years later that he regretted not marrying Aretha. Aretha shared that Dennis missed his chance to be her husband. In an interview, she explained that Dennis was about 15 years too late. She said that by the time he understood how valuable she was, it was already too late. Aretha had been hurt by Dennis a few times, and she wasn't interested in him anymore. She had moved on, and he was left to regret his missed opportunity. He confessed, "It was all in my court, and I think I'm the one that was so scared of marrying this superstar." It seemed that Dennis was unsure of how to handle being with someone as famous and successful as Aretha. He later realized that he had made a mistake. It was clear that Aretha had learned her lesson about love. She knew that sometimes the men she loved couldn't love her the way she deserved. By the late 1970s, Edwards was addicted to cocaine. This addiction caused serious problems for him and for the Temptations. He was let go from the group because of it. But in 1980, when the Temptations went back to their old record label, Motown, they brought Edwards back. Sadly, the drug problems didn't stop there. Around the same time, Edwards started performing with former Temptations members David Ruffin and Eddie Kendricks. These were powerful singers, but they all had personal problems, especially with drugs. Their reunion brought a lot of excitement from fans. They even released a new album in 1982 with the Temptations. But David Ruffin's drug problems made him unreliable. He missed shows, and so did Edwards. Eventually, Edwards was kicked out again in 1984. After that, he tried a solo career. He had some success, especially with the 1984 duet Don't Look Any Further with singer Siedah Garrett. This song became very popular, and it gave his solo career a boost. He rejoined the Temptations again for a short time, but he left for good in 1987. In 1989, Edwards started touring with Ruffin and Kendricks. They called themselves former leads of the Temptations. Fans loved seeing them together, but the happiness didn't last. In 1991, David Ruffin died from what many believe was a drug overdose at a crack house in Philadelphia. It was a sad day for music. Just a year later, in 1992, Eddie Kendricks died from lung cancer. Edwards was left alone, having lost two close friends. After their deaths, Edwards started a new group called the Temptations Review, featuring Dennis Edwards. He brought in Paul Williams Jr., the son of original Temptation Paul Williams. This group gave Edwards a chance to keep singing the songs people loved. But even though he was still performing, his life behind the scenes was full of pain. His past choices, especially with drugs, had hurt many parts of his life.